I still remember the cold air that hit my face the night my whole life split into two clean halves. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can feel that same sharp wind brushing against my skin, almost as if it has been waiting to remind me of what happened. My dad, Jonathan Hale, had been gone for only a week. His absence was so fresh that I could still hear his voice echo in the walls of our old brick house in Savannah, Georgia. The house had stood for almost 100 years, with ivy growing along the sides and wooden floors that creaked the same way they did when I was little. He used to stand by the kitchen window every morning, sipping his coffee and talking about Europe. He would say that London was the only city where rain made him feel at peace. I never expected that the last time I saw him look out that window would actually be the last. When grief settles on a home, even the air feels heavy. That night, the house felt like it was breathing unevenly. The hallways were dim, and every step I took echoed too loudly. I was carrying a small box filled with my dad's old watches, the ones he collected from little antique shops in New York and Boston. The box also held a few letters he wrote to me when I was away for college. I pressed the lid of that box so tightly that my fingers ached. It felt like the only solid thing left in my life. I had not expected quiet. I had not expected peace. But I also had not expected what I saw when I reached the bottom of the staircase. The front door was standing wide open, like the house was trying to let something escape. And standing in that doorway was a man I barely recognized. His name was Carl Bishop. He had pale eyes and a way of folding his arms that made him seem like he owned any space he walked into. He had married my mother only hours before. Hours. Not even a full day had passed since we buried my father. My mother, Victoria, stood beside him. Her hair was done, her makeup was perfect, and she looked like she was ready to go to a dinner party rather than mourn the man she had called her husband for 25 years. When her eyes met mine, there was no softness, no grief, not even a hint of guilt. It was just coldness. Coldness sharper than the night air that pushed in my back. I whispered with my throat tightening, "Mom, what are you doing?" She crossed her arms just like Carl did and looked at me as if I were a stranger knocking on her door. "Get out," she said. Her voice was flat and icy. "You hear me? Get out of my house." For a moment, I honestly thought she was joking. My mind tried to make excuses for her. Maybe the grief was twisting her words. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe she did not understand what she was saying. But then she took a step toward me, her jaw tight with anger. I said, "I am your kid. You cannot do this." She pointed at the door and shouted so loudly that the words still ring inside me. "No. Go to your father. He wants you, not me." It was strange. The house suddenly felt too small. Her words echoed against the walls like they were being repeated over and over. I felt something deep inside me crack, like a thin line splitting through glass. I tried to answer her, to remind her that I had lost him too, but the words got stuck in my throat. I could not speak. I could not breathe normally. All I could do was stand there, holding that box of my father's things, feeling a kind of pain I had never experienced in my life. Carl stepped aside, making space by the door as if I were nothing more than an unwanted guest. I realized then that they had planned this, that they had talked about it, that they had decided without me, without even pretending to care what I was going through. I walked to the hallway closet, pulled out my small gray suitcase, and filled it with whatever clothes I could grab. My hands were shaking so hard that some things fell to the floor, but I did not stop. I could feel my mother watching me, waiting for me to leave. She did not speak. She did not apologize. She did not even ask if I had anywhere to go. When I stepped outside with my suitcase, the cold night air hit me like a slap. My breath turned white in front of me, and the sky above the house looked darker than usual. I turned around just in time to see her slam the front door shut. The sound was loud, final, and cruel. I stood on the front lawn with my box pressed against my chest, my suitcase by my ankle, and tears streaming down my face. My legs felt weak, and I had to sit on the grass just to breathe. The house that once felt like the safest place in the world now felt like it had rejected me the same way she had. But what I did not know, what I could not see through my tears, was that someone else was watching. Someone is hidden in the driveway across the street. Someone my father trusted more than anyone. Someone who had promised him that if anything ever happened, he would protect me. My father's lawyer had seen everything. Every cruel word. Every moment. And while I sat on the grass crying, thinking I had lost everything, the truth was that the next morning would change my life in a way I could never have imagined. I spent the night in a small motel on the edge of Savannah, the kind of place where the walls were thin, the carpet smelled like old rain, and the lights flickered every time the air conditioning turned on. I lay on the stiff bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what had happened. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of my mother standing in the doorway, her voice sharp and cruel as she screamed at me to get out. I saw Carl folding his arms, watching me like I was nothing more than a burden. I felt the cold night air again, felt the door slam in my face, felt the sting of betrayal more deeply than I had ever felt anything in my life. The room was quiet, but inside my chest, everything was loud. My heartbeat, my breath, my thoughts, all of it ran in circles. For the first time since my father died, I felt completely alone. No anchor. No home. No parent to turn to. I barely slept at all. And when I did, I kept waking up in a panic, reaching for my phone, hoping maybe it had all been a nightmare. But it wasn't. Reality was even worse than any nightmare I could have imagined. When the sun rose, it sent a faint orange glow through the thin curtains. I sat up slowly, wiped my face with the back of my hand, and tried to gather myself. My suitcase sat by the door exactly where I had dropped it. My father's box of letters and watches was still on the nightstand. I touched the lid gently because it felt like the only part of him I still had left. I was sitting on the bed, trying to breathe when I heard it. A firm knock. 3 steady taps followed by silence. My stomach tightened. For a moment, I thought maybe it was my mother coming to tell me she had made a mistake. But deep down, I knew that was impossible. I walked to the door slowly, almost afraid of who might be standing there. When I pulled it open, I froze. 3 men in black suits stood in a neat line. Their expressions were serious, but not harsh. The front man had silver hair combed back neatly and a calm, steady gaze. He held a leather briefcase in one hand. "Miss Hale?" he asked. "Yes," I said quietly, gripping the edge of the door. He nodded once. "My name is Edward Langston. I am your father's attorney." My breath caught. My father's attorney. The words made my heart jump in a way I could not explain. He continued, "These are my associates, Mr. Turner and Mr. Evans. We apologize for arriving so early, but this matter could not wait." I stepped aside, letting them into the small motel room. They entered politely, their shoes silent on the carpet. Edward set the briefcase on the table and looked at me with a soft expression, the kind someone wears when they already know you are hurting. He said, "Your father left everything for you. No exceptions." For a few seconds, I did not understand what he meant. My mind could not even hold the size of those words. "Everything," I whispered. "Yes," he said, opening his briefcase. "Every property, every account, every investment. He arranged all of this years ago. He only asked us to act when the time was right, and that time is now." I sat down because my knees felt too weak to hold me up. Edward took out a leather folder and placed it in my hands. The leather was soft and warm, like something my father would have chosen with care. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The first page listed the accounts. A personal balance of $9 million. I blinked, thinking I had read it wrong. I kept scrolling down the page. A townhouse in Boston. A lake house in Vermont. A loft apartment in London. The Savannah house. Several investment accounts. A share in a real estate partnership in New York. My father had left me a life I never even knew he had built. I covered my mouth with my hand as tears stung my eyes. Edward sat on the chair across from me and spoke gently. "Your father trusted you. More than anyone. He believed you would carry his legacy with strength and care." I tried to breathe, but everything inside me felt too heavy. "Why didn't he tell me?" I whispered. Edward replied, "He intended to. But sometimes life changes faster than we expect. He updated his will after his last trip to Europe. He told us that if anything ever happened to him, you must be protected. Protected. That word hit me harder than anything else. Protected from what? Protected from whom? And then it hit me. Protected by my mother. Protected from Carl. Protected from anyone who might try to take advantage of me. I felt a deep ache in my chest because even in death, my father was the only one who had ever truly chosen me. Edward continued, "We will take you to the house now. Legally, it is yours. You are the rightful owner of everything he left behind." Everything changed in that moment. My fear began to fade. My grief shifted into something sharper, something stronger. I realized that the girl who cried on the lawn the night before was not the same girl sitting in that motel room now. My father had not abandoned me. He had prepared for me. He had planned for me. And he had made sure that when the world pushed me out, he would pull me back in. When I finally stood up, I felt a strange calm settle in my chest. The kind of calm that only comes when you know you are no longer powerless. I closed the leather folder, wiped my eyes, and said, "Take me home." And they did. Edward and his team drove me back to the Savannah house 2 hours after we left the motel. The morning sun was rising higher now, warm but sharp, casting long shadows across the streets I grew up on. My hands rested in my lap the entire drive, gripping the leather folder my father left for me. Every heartbeat reminded me that this time I was not returning home as a lost daughter being kicked out. I was returning as the owner, the heir, the one my father trusted above everyone. The closer we got to the house, the more my stomach tightened. I recognized every corner, every old oak tree, every mailbox leaning slightly to one side. This neighborhood had been my world since childhood, yet now it felt different. Not in a painful way, but in a powerful one. I was coming back with the truth. I was coming back with my father's voice behind me. When Edward's car stopped in front of the house, I felt my breath catch. The front yard looked the same as it had the night before. The grass was slightly overgrown. The roses near the porch were still drooping. The paint on the railings was still chipped. But everything felt different because this time I was not standing on the lawn with tears running down my face. This time, I had a whole legal team at my side and my father's signature backing me. Edward turned to me. "Take a moment if you need it. There is no rush." But I did not want to wait. I stepped out of the car and walked toward the porch. The boards creaked beneath my feet, the same sound I used to hear when my dad came home late from work. For a second, my heart tightened with grief, wishing he could be here to see this moment. But then I remembered his words, the ones he wrote in a letter just months before he passed. "If life ever pushes you out of a place you belong, walk back in stronger than before." I knocked once. Hard. Steady. The door opened almost immediately. Victoria stood there wearing a bright smile that did not reach her eyes. She always did that when she wanted something. But the smile faded the moment she saw the lawyers behind me. Her face froze, and something in her expression shifted from forced sweetness to raw fear. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tight. Carl walked up behind her, pulling his robe tighter. When he saw Edward's team, his eyebrows lifted. "What is going on?" Edward stepped forward calmly, handing Victoria a document. "Mrs. Bishop, we are here to inform you that this property belongs to Miss Hale. She is the sole legal heir to Mr. Hale's entire estate." My mother's face went pale. So pale it looked like all the color had drained from her skin. "This is my house," she said. "I have lived here for 20 years. Edward's voice stayed steady. "Your late husband owned this home outright. He signed it in his daughter's name. You have no legal claim to it." Her eyes snapped toward me. "You did this," she hissed. "You planned this." "No," I said quietly. "Dad did." Carl stepped forward, trying to sound brave. "Now wait just a minute. There must be some mistake. I can make a few calls. I know people in the city." Edward did not even blink. "You're welcome to make calls. But you will do so from off this property. If you refuse to leave, we will contact the police for unlawful occupation." The porch went silent. I could hear the wind in the trees, the distant sound of a car driving down the street, and the soft rustle of leaves falling. My mother looked at me like she did not recognize me. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she only knew the version of me who stayed quiet, who obeyed, who cried softly in her room. Not the woman standing in front of her now holding everything my father left behind. Victoria's voice broke. "You cannot do this to me. You did it first," I said. "You told me to go to my father."
"So I did."
"And he brought me back." Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but no words came out. She grabbed her purse off the side table, stepping past me without meeting my eyes. Carl followed behind her, muttering something under his breath about lawyers and rights and misunderstandings. But none of it mattered. None of it could change what my father had written and signed. They reached the edge of the porch steps, and for a moment, my mother turned her face slightly toward me. Not enough to look at me fully. Just enough for me to see the tightness in her jaw and the anger behind her eyes. She shook her head once, almost as if she was blaming me for the consequences of her own cruelty. Then she walked away. The street swallowed them both. Edward touched my shoulder lightly. "Take your time. This is your home now." I nodded, though my chest felt heavy. I pushed the front door open and stepped inside. The air smelled like old wood and lavender cleaner. The living room was still the same. The couch where my dad used to read was still in its place. The picture frames on the mantel were untouched. And yet, everything felt new, different, stronger. I closed the door slowly, feeling the weight of the moment settle into my bones. For the first time since my father died, the house finally felt like it belonged to someone who loved him. It belonged to me. I walked through each room, letting myself touch the furniture, the walls, the memories. And as I moved deeper into the house, I realized something powerful. I had not just taken my home back. I had taken my life back. When the lawyers finally left, the house fell into a deep quiet that wrapped around me like a blanket I had forgotten existed. I stood in the center of the living room, listening to the stillness. For the first time since my father died, the silence did not feel like a threat. It felt like space. It felt like a beginning. The air held a mix of old wood, lavender cleaner, and soft sunlight drifting through the window. I sat down on the floor near the fireplace, leaned my head back against the couch, and breathed in slowly, letting myself feel everything all at once. My father used to sit in this exact spot on Sunday mornings, reading old travel journals he collected from Europe. He loved quietly learning about the world. He used to tell me that a home is not a place you own. It is a place that sees you, hears you, and lets you grow. I never understood that until now. Now the house felt like it could finally breathe again, as if it had been waiting for me to return. For years, I believed that my mother's love was something I had to earn. I believed that if I tried hard enough, if I helped enough, if I stayed quiet enough, maybe she would choose me. But in the end, she chose comfort, control, and the man she married hours after the funeral. She saw only what she could use, never who I was. And for a long time, that hurt in a way that felt unbearable. But my father saw me. He always did. Even when he didn't say much. Even when he didn't talk about his plans. He understood my heart in a way no one else ever tried to. He knew my fears. He knew what I carried even when I pretended to be fine. And somehow, he knew exactly what I would face after he was gone. That was the part that made my chest tighten the most. He had been protecting me long before I realized I needed protection. I stood up slowly and walked to the backyard. The morning air was warm and carried the soft scent of the roses he planted years ago. The sky above Savannah was a bright blue, clear and wide, the kind of sky he loved. I looked up and whispered, "Thank you, Dad. For everything. For not giving up on me. For seeing me when no one else did." The next days passed in a blur of repairs, memories, and new beginnings. I painted the walls soft white, letting the rooms feel open instead of heavy. I replaced old furniture with pieces that made me feel calm and safe. I scrubbed the floors myself, not because I needed to, but because every inch of this house felt like a part of him. I planted new lavender by the porch, remembering how he used to say the scent reminded him of summers in England. When the house began to feel like mine again, I visited the lake house in Vermont. The air there was crisp and cool, and the water shimmered under the soft sunlight. I walked along the shore and felt a sense of peace settle in my stomach. That house was beautiful, quiet, and full of potential. Then I traveled to Boston to see the townhouse he left me. It had brick walls, tall windows, and a view of the old streets that made me feel strangely connected to him. I spent hours sitting on the balcony with a cup of tea, imagining the life he had planned for me a long time ago. I even traveled to London to see the loft he bought years ago. It was simple, clean, and full of light. When I stepped inside, I felt close to him in a way I had not felt since he passed. I knew this place had meant something to him, and now it meant something to me, too. Piece by piece, my life began to rebuild itself. Not because of the money or the houses, but because of what they represented. They were proof that someone believed in me. Proof that I was not as alone as my mother tried to make me feel. My father had left me more than properties and accounts. He had left me the freedom to start over. Freedom to choose my own path without fear. Freedom to breathe without someone controlling the air around me. Sometimes people asked me if I hated my mother after everything she did. And the truth surprised even me. I did not hate her. I simply accepted her. I accepted that she would never give me what I had spent my whole childhood begging for. She had chosen her own comfort and control over love and loyalty. That was her path. And I finally understood that I did not have to follow her down it. I chose a different path. A brighter one. A steadier one. One that my father would have been proud of. One night, weeks later, I sat in the living room with a leather folder on my lap. I ran my fingers over my father's signature, the same signature that had changed my life. I closed my eyes and felt a steady warmth fill my chest. It was not anger, not grief, not fear. It was something stronger, something cleaner. It was the quiet understanding that I had survived something painful and come out stronger. The real gift my father gave me was not wealth. It was not property. It was not the legal victory that sent my mother away. The real gift was freedom. Freedom to live without fear. Freedom to choose love and peace. Freedom to build a life that reflects who I am, not who someone tries to shape me into. And today, when I tell this story, I do it with strength in my voice. Because I walked out of pain. I walked through fire. And I came home to myself.